Apart from us, the living skeletons of apartheid in Orania and Kleinfontein. So this is the town of Orania, and Orania has its own colleges, it has its own houses in town, and it has its own churches, it has its own schools. It's located in South Africa, and it's an all white town, and no South African black people are allowed to live there, only the whites. And the history that's there is a history they're making for themselves. They even got their own currency, and they have their own ambulance. They have their own schools teaching the kids how to build housing and plumbing. So I'll say this: you can't be mad at the fact that they're trying to build and create their own town and their own livelihood, but you can be disappointed with the divisions that are happening in terms of the racism and how people don't want to diversify. But I believe this stems from apartheid, and so it isn't a good look in terms of creating diversity, if you want to look at it from that standpoint of view. But Orania is in Northern Cape, markets itself as a cultural haven, so that's the way they call it. And the reason why I found this is because I was looking at a documentary from a young man who is living in South Africa, and he basically went and he interviewed some people, and I'll leave I don't know if it's an actual link, but I'll leave the name of the person who I seen in the documentary, and maybe you'll come across it. Maybe I'll leave the title of it, because they actually take you on a journey into Orania, and you get to see what the town looks like, and also listen to the person that is running the town and what their beliefs are. So, the birth of South Africa's democracy in 1994 meant not only the dismantling of apartheid laws, but the moral and symbolic promise of inclusion, restoration, and healing. Yet 3 decades later, the vestige of apartheid persists, not only in economic inequality and spatial injustice, but in towns such as Orania in Northern Cape. It's Gauten's Kleinfontein, which thrive on exclusivity under the guise of self-determination. So to understand the gravity of this, we must return to the architect of apartheid. So through laws such as the Group Areas Act and the Population Registration Act, apartheid engineered a system where space, movement, and even identity were brutally policed. Public amenities were segregated under the Reservation and Separate Amenities Act, and black South Africans were effectively criminalized in their own country under the past laws. So these laws didn't just restrict, they dehumanized. They enforced a logic that some lives were worth more than others. The democratic breakthrough 31 years ago promised a rupture from that logic. So the Constitution celebrated globally, enshrined equality, dignity, and freedom. But how meaningful are those rights when certain towns nestle comfortably in democratic South Africa systematically exclude people based on race? Orania and Kleinfontein market themselves as Afrikaner cultural havens. They invoke Section 235 of the Constitution, which allows for cultural self-determination, but the culture becomes a smokescreen for racial homogeneity. It is not self-determination, but rather a modern-day segregation. So these communities are not merely preserving a language of tradition, they are preserving apartheid's core belief in racial separation. So their very infrastructure, from who is allowed to own property to who may enter or live there, is built on exclusion. So what that means is this town of Orania, only white South Africaners or white people are allowed to live there, to thrive there, to be there, to sleep there, to build houses there, to go to school there. It has to do with whites' cultures only. So the idea of black South Africans, who make up the majority of the population, are not welcome in these areas is a slap in the face to Madiba's dream of an inclusive nation. This exclusion is not passive or symbolic. It is active and operational, much like during apartheid Black South Africans may enter these towns only as laborers, not as equals, residents, or citizens of shared nationhood. So you can work as a laborer, but you cannot live there, and you cannot go to school there, and you cannot be citizens there. So this is not merely a moral issue, it is a constitutional and political crisis. So while proponents argue that these towns are private, peaceful, and constitutionally protected, the selected interpretation of rights undermines the Constitution's foundational values. Freedom of association does not grant the right to recreate apartheid under cultural pretenses. Their existence weakens social cohesion and inflames racial tensions, reinforcing the belief that integration is not only unwanted but impossible. So commenters or commentators often deflect by asking why cultural minorities cannot have spaces to protect their identity. This is dishonest framing. No one is challenging the right of Afrikaners to practice their culture, language, and traditions. Like other cultures, they would still be able to practice their culture, preserve their language in any society across the country. But what is being challenged is the systemic exclusion of others based on race. There's a profound difference between culture celebration and racial isolation. The existence of Orania and Kleinfontein is not a question of legal technicalities, but of national conscience. So they are the living skeletons of apartheid. Proof that while the laws have changed, the attitudes and structures of racial separation have not been fully dismantled. The democratic project cannot afford to look away. South Africa's future cannot be built on parallel societies, one multiracial and striving for equality, the other clutching to the ghost of white supremacy. So true reconciliation means confronting these uncomfortable realities and demanding that no town, no community, and no individual be allowed to exist apart from us. So this right here is pretty much the whole article, and this is just a small snippet of what the town looks like. And you see all of the land that they had bought, and they actually own this within a black South Africa. So this is their town, and so this is the town of Orania. And I saw the documentary earlier, and basically a person was reflecting on how they had their own airstrip, they have their own churches, they have their own schools, they have even a college university. They teach the kids how to be builders, plumbers, to be able to make their own houses. They're making their own businesses. They have money that actually has the symbol of Orania, I believe. They got their own statues. So what I'm coming to you with this for is that Trump, he just allowed 57 to 59 people here. And so I got some really nasty comments because I basically told the truth about how he called them refugees, which they're not refugees. So they have most of the wealth. They have like between, like, I'll say 57 to 67% of the wealth that they hold, even though it's 3% of them in South Africa. So that should tell you they're not refugees. They're not fleeing what he's claiming that he says is violence. Those people were violent. If they had to be violent, they were met with violence, because these people are more hostile and they want to have apartheid. If you look at what apartheid was, that's what Nelson Mandela was fighting against. It's basically what we deal with here in the US, like when we talk about Jim Crow laws and segregation. That's what apartheid was in their country. It was separation, and this town does not allow, like I just read, it doesn't allow black people, black South Africans, to live there. You can be laborers, but basically like slaves, but you can't have a house there. You can't go to their colleges. You can't partake in all of the things that they have to offer in terms of living there as a resident and being a citizen. So they want exclusion from black South African people in a South African continent. Place. So it just doesn't make any sense. So that's basically what the article was entailing. So it's a big fight, but the only thing I can say is you can't be mad at the fact that they're sticking together on an issue when you think about how black people sometimes need to learn those skills of trying to stick together and not fight against one another over silly issues that divide us within our culture. And so, like, making your own currency, having your own, your own town, building your own schools, I mean, you really can't be too mad at that, but what you could be upset about is the fact that it's exclusionary and isolation, and I'm noticing that part has to do with racism and apartheid, and that isn't good. And if you look at all that land, I think this is a good picture right here. If you look at all this land right here, this can get bigger. And that's the problem. That's a big problem in South Africa, I believe. Because what's going to happen if they hold a lot of wealth and they're able to build like they're building, and they said the kids are going to be the future, pretty soon they're going to take over a lot of the space of in South Africa, and to the point to where who's the richest country within a black country? Who's got their own little, they're basically building over black people. And we've seen this happen in the US, where black people will have a little bit of land and they build freeways over the areas, and even though you own your property outright, they try to buy it out and they try to tell you we're building a freeway over it. And so that's where all those freeways, that's why we got all this traffic here in LA and in LA County. A lot of those freeways, they weren't put up just because they look good and they're convenient for cars, and that's why we have all the smog and bad air. People were so racist, they build built over people's homes. There were black people that had property here, and they built over those homes, and they moved those people out. Churches was built, and they moved those people out of those churches. The churches were bought, the land was bought, paid for, they paid their taxes on time. They still built, or they said you gotta move. They uprooted people and basically propositioned them, said we were building freeways over this, and it was racial policies that did it. They didn't want to see black people having any type of wealth, and so that's where that came from. And being like they say, homogeneity, where you don't want black people to, you don't want diversity. I feel like that's how Trump is doing. He wants to move these people here so that they can bring those same ideas, ideologies here into the U.S. They're not refugees, and he knows this. He's saying that, oh, they were met with such hostility and all of that. The reason why he's bringing them here, because he wants them to do that to the people that are, to black people that are here. He wants to bring that mindset of, we don't like the woke folks. We don't like the people that are about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So you notice he did all this dismantling. He's trying to, dismantle all of the things that people need here in the U.S. and most of the people of color. He basically revoked the TPS. He's deporting people. He revoked visas. He's doing all of these things. If you can't see what's going on, people, he's basically trying to bring all of that apartheid mentality, that KK mentality, all of that. He's trying to do that here. He's not saying it, it's what he's doing. It's not what you say, it's what you do in your actions. That's what he's doing. So you pay close attention, because pretty soon what you see right here, we're gonna have that here in the US. We already have it, but not to the magnitude to where it really hits home, to where people will wake up and say, wow, this is bad. I feel like the way people here in the US, like I said, black people, we are the children of the black people who fought for civil rights, and we enjoyed those luxuries. But in the not so near future, we might be stripped of all of that, and we're already seeing the effects of some of that. And it isn't bad enough yet, because we still got people who think that, oh, that's just, they said that's the first group. He said he wanted to bring 97,000 people. And what do people do? They expand. They create. They mix. They make more places so that only their people can thrive. And so if they come here with that mindset, it is going to be bad. They're going to bring something here that people are not going to be prepared for. And so you think Jim Crow was really bad. It was. But the way this, if you look at what apartheid was for the South Africans, it was brutal. It was really brutal. And that's what these people that they claim are refugees, Trump's claiming they're refugees, they're bringing that here. So you need to really wake up. You need to wake up to what is going on. If you just make these comments and think that this is funny, and then one day you look up and you're trying to figure out, why can't we live here? Why can't we go to school here? Why can't we eat at this park? Why can't we go to this restaurant? Don't ask why. Think about all of this. Apart from us, the living skeletons of apartheid is in Orania and Clairefontaine. So I'm done with this video, but what I'm going to do is at the bottom of this video, I'm going to put where I saw the documentary. Now, what I want to say is some of the same mentality of sticking together, black people need to be like that. I felt like we were more about making our own towns and sticking together and trying to build and trying to unify when we were met with brute force. Why do we have to go through that again? Just to finally wake up and be like, wow, we need to get it together. How come not do that before it gets crazy? That's all I'm saying.